Absolute bedlam. Absolute bedlam. Absolute bedlam. Talking about topics and stuff. Absolute bedlam. Absolute bedlam. Absolute Bedlam podcast. Who? What? Where? Why?
Dorset, England's gateway to the sea. Legends tell of how travellers and wayfarers would navigate vast oceans to meet the natural beauty of the Jurassic coastline. As the centuries have passed, only their song remains. Absolute Bedlam are proud to be sponsored by Shanty Spirit, the taste of the Jurassic Coast.
Hello and welcome to Absolute Bedlam podcast. We're doing something a bit different tonight. I've been learning self-reflection quite a lot lately, and it's coming up to 4 years of ABP, of doing this basically every week / every other week. So I've got my good friend Sam, who still holds the record for the worst meal deal choice in human history, and he's going to interview me as a form of therapy. I need your email address, by the way, Sam, so I can pay you for this. So, yeah, fire away, anything you want. At some point, naturally, I'm going to have to promote the sponsors. But
Obviously.
for the next hour and a half or whatever it is, then you've got my attention. So go for it.
Lovely. Well, yeah, it goes without saying. Hello, everyone. I am Sam. I'm the host today of Absolute Bedlam podcast.
Hell yeah.
You may remember me, or probably not remember me, from certain other episodes that I've done. I believe Series 2, Episode 2 may have been one of them.
Yeah, and we did Chris Muno, didn't we?
Yeah, we did Chris from El Muno. Very quick plug on that one. They've actually got a new album coming out this week. So if you've ever listened to them before, or you listen to them after that podcast, then by all means, check out the new stuff. Right, so yeah, Ben, this is it, mate.
That's it.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Let's
do it.
Let's crack that head open like a walnut and see what oozes out. I hope no one eats while they listen to your podcast. Anyway, so first question then, Ben. Describe Ben in 5 words. That doesn't have to be 5 words making a sentence. It could just be 5 words. But how would you describe yourself?
Tenacious, sensitive, hardworking. I suppose that's a word. One word.
We'll allow it.
Reliable, and competent, I think, especially within the podcast sphere.
There we go.
Yeah.
Well, in what I believe they call the world of showbiz, which is what we're venturing into in a strange kind of way. This is a perfect way for me to segue and link into what you've just said. In that, let's start in the obvious place. Let's talk about the podcast. And I know you've probably mentioned it to people previously. You've mentioned it on the pod, but tell me how the podcast actually came about.
Right. So in October 2020, everyone was climbing the walls. Everyone was bored out of their minds. And I kind of wanted to reconnect with school friends and just people that I'd fallen out of touch with. We're all stuck inside due to the C word that everyone knows and loves. And I thought this might be a good time to interview bands because touring had stopped. And, you wouldn't necessarily get news stories out of the bands because there wasn't anything on the horizon other than a whole day of podcast interviews because everyone kind of jumped on that train all at once. But it was a good opportunity to sort of reach out. Everyone was grounded. So it kind of opened up everyone's calendar. And I've always wanted to kind of help local businesses, and I thought a podcast would be a good amalgamation of everything. It was always meant to be everything as well. It was never just meant to be music. It was never just meant to be school friends laughing about nicknames. It was always just meant to be this encapsulation of everything. And the reason it's called Absolute Bedlam is the way I talk. I quite frequently jitter around. So sometimes talking to me is like talking to absolute bedlam because I've got lots of thoughts, and sometimes I don't quite go in a straight line. So yeah,
So
it's been a
yeah,
bit
so
mad.
you are the true embodiment of absolute bedlam.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, so was that going to be the name always from the start, or did you have any alternatives?
So it was at one point going to be called Ranting and Rambling with Ben, but I thought that had a bit of a negative connotation to it.
Okay.
Um, and if I'm interviewing genuinely successful people, then if I say to them, what annoys you? What do you want to have a rant? Do you want to have a vent? If they don't have anything to say, then it can kind of fall quite flat quite quickly.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I thought Absolute Bedlam would be more of a all-encompassing sphere rather than a specific question that anchors the podcast.
Hmm. Was that just a phrase that came to mind one day? Did you just think, oh, actually, that kind of sums up what I want to do, or did you hear someone say it and you think, oh, hang on a second, that actually works better than ranting and raving with Ben?
I think I heard the saying that a lot of people say the word obviously and literally in their vocabulary a lot at the moment. And some people in my life were kind of telling me things that don't matter, like they're a irrelevant piece of information. So I'd say to some people that was absolutely useless, and I'd always emphasize the word absolutely. And I thought bedlam was a good way of saying chaos, and
Yeah.
then the throwback to the Beehive Bedlam, which is behind me, was a game that you would play on Sky, and it was basically Bejeweled Blitz. And like my community is called the Beehive. Everything kind of lent towards the bee because he's buzzing around potentially without a bit of a clue, and he just does stuff because he feels this instinct and this innate sort of responsibility to do stuff. And yeah, so it's just absolute bedlam. Just anything goes, any person from any walk of life, and yeah, it's kind of spiraled out of control since then, really.
Well, like I say, it has been people from different walks of life. So I know from within our own circle, if you will, you've had your friends on there. Like you said, originally it was a way of getting your, you know, old school friends to kind of reconnect with them. But then obviously you've had, you know, some fairly decent names from the music world. Let's be honest. I mean, all
Yeah,
right, we'll say Chris from El Muno, who are a growing band. There we are, giving them two plugs now. I should see if I can get something out of them.
absolutely.
Then you obviously had MC Lars,
Yeah,
and then the guys from Weezer. And it's just you look at that, but then at the same time you've had um, other YouTubers or podcasters who've come in. It has been a real melting pot of society in general, and I suppose your world that you've kind of gone out to. And in the time that you've done the podcast, what has actually been your not necessarily your favorite guest, but what has been your favorite thing to kind of delve into?
well, first things first, it's Wheatus, not Weezer. I can't have
Oh,
Brendan
Wheatus, of course
listening
it
to
is.
this.
Yeah, sorry, Wheatus. You're
It's all
right.
right. They
Sorry,
get a
my
lot of that on
bad.
Twitter. It's all good.
Yeah,
Um,
it was Wheatus. I even listened to it as well. So there you are. That is completely my bad.
so I can kind of emphasize with Matt from Nevermind Polly podcast on this one because he gets this question quite a few times. It's the chase, and it's that sort of proving myself and saying, why can't I get hold of this person? Like, why can't I go to Weymouth Comic Con and get Ross Mullen from Game of Thrones on? And it's that sort of ability to just ask and if you don't get it, you don't get it. That's fine. But yeah, MC Lars really opened doors for me in terms of getting lots of networky people on. Recently had Shave the Dark Lord as well on, and they've just done a collaboration album called 999, and I helped promote that for them. And he's always hitting me up. He's always like, "Hey, dude, hope you're good. Do you want to speak to this person?" So he's kind of like, in a really weird way, he's kind of like my sort of agent that I don't pay and don't necessarily need him to hit me up because I've got scheduling down to a fine art now on this point. But yeah, it's all been really good overall. I think the one thing that keeps me coming back is the stupid questions. So like asking people if they know when their bins go out, and just completely like throwing all preconceived notions out of the door. And we'll get the band on, they'll plug their album, they'll plug their tour, they'll plug their music video, but I just want to know when the bins go out, and I just want to know, like, how do they think they'll be remembered? And it quite aggressively changes subject, I think, because if you're just talking constantly about like really in-depth, like deep subjects, then this can get quite existentially and quite sort of introspective. And I want to break it up. I think one of the best questions I've asked in the last couple of years is, how was school? Because everyone has that experience and it's a good icebreaker. And that's always at the front of the episode, because it doesn't make sense to ask it after you've promoted your stuff. So I try and keep it fairly structured. I did at one point sort of think to myself, I should just ask stupid questions for the entire episode. And that was kind of inspired by, on YouTube, there's a YouTube channel called Kids Interview Bands.
Right.
And it's like kids interviewing Mastodon, asking them like what their favorite color crayon is, and just stupid stuff like that. And it felt a bit like that didn't really have any weight to it. It was kind of just that virality of like the drummer talking about the color green. But I wanted it to have substance, and I also wanted it to be a bit silly. And I think I've done quite a good job of marrying those two things together. So
Yeah, well, I mean, you want to look at silly, for example. I think I've never laughed at some of your episodes previously than some of the ones you do with Casper, because the innocence of youth, quite generally, and when you are young, and again, we're all going to have this in common. Everyone is a child at some point, believe it or not. I haven't met anyone who wasn't yet, and it's a time comes in our lives when we do lose that innocence and that open-mindedness, and it's nice to be able to hear that sometimes, and you can even hear it in your voice when you're speaking to Casper as well, that you enjoy those kind of interactions and just his off the wall view on life. So that's always really cool to hear. But I'm going to change the next question very slightly.
no worries.
Because the next question was, where do you see Absolute Bedlam podcast in 5 years? But going by the fact that you've been going 4 years, let's keep it at that. Where do you see it? Or where do you want to see it in 4 years?
I want it to be able to create passive income, and I want to be able to potentially get on charts. They're both very number-driven answers to that question. But I feel like I've kind of hit my ceiling in terms of YouTube, at least, where most of my videos get sort of 20 to 40 views. No matter what I put up, it's always that number. And it's not necessarily to the point of exhaustion and giving up, but it's like, short of doing the Harlem Shake, what can I do to push the YouTube algorithm to favor my videos? And what can Spotify do to engage with new listeners? I've tried giveaways. Doesn't work. People show up, they tag people, and then they leave. Um, but yeah, I just want it to be a bit more solid. I want this to have more of a community feel to it. And I do get quite a few requests, like messages. I do get quite a few comments. People seem to enjoy the content, but they don't share it. And that, I think, is the next stage, really. But I also don't want to sacrifice my own integrity and do stupid stuff for likes and clicks. And,
Hmm.
you know, you always see stupid videos on Facebook, like someone like running around in a supermarket with a lightsaber. And it's like, you're going to kind of live and die by that video. If that's your only intention is to go viral, then you'll fall off. You always hear that expression, how you've fallen off. You've fallen off, bro. That's what people say now. You're irrelevant. And it's kind of like being a one-hit wonder band, really. It's very tricky to get back on that pedestal once you've kind of been shoved off. So yeah, more of the same. I'm enjoying doing this once every 2 weeks rather than every week, because doing it every week created such a backlog. Me and John, my business partner, at one point we had 4 months of episodes, and they were just getting stuck in the pipeline because I can't edit, and I have no desire to edit. I have absolutely no desire to listen to my own voice. I want to show up, do the recording, let everyone else do the stuff around the episode, and I pay them. It's not like they're slaves stuck in the basement. So yeah, it's just tying everyone together, creating a bit more of a smoother process. We've currently got like 3 or 4 episodes in the pipe as it is talking to you right now, Sam. So yeah, just wanted to get a bit more slicker and a bit more refined. But I quite enjoy the interview process, and I quite enjoy recording with Casper and eating food and drinking fizzy drinks. But the only way to win the game is to keep playing. Something that I learned quite early on. You know, you're not going to go viral if you're not uploading. So it's a tricky game. There's a lot of people doing what I'm doing. Podcasting's become this huge, you know, there's a lot of people doing this, and it's not exactly a high barrier to entry now. You just need a microphone, an internet connection, and the ability to send off emails to people. But I hope that people stick around because they're genuinely enjoying the content and they're not sort of feeling that they have to watch anything I do.
Well, I think it's one of those things where I know from podcasts I listen to, I tend to stay in my sort of lane, if you will, with what I listen to. I know what I like listening to, and I'll listen to it. But some of those even I've ended up ditching because actually there's elements of it that don't fit that, and I'm just like, actually, I don't want to, invest my time in listening to it. So
Yeah.
I think it is important that when you say you're keeping things, and I think when you are diverse, it does help. And like we said earlier, you kind of don't stick to, I'm just going to speak to musicians, or I'm just going to speak to, someone local or whatever. I'm going to speak to you. And when I talk to them about Weymouth and Portland, only people that live in Weymouth and Portland are going to understand this. It's good, but it's interesting you say that you don't like the sound of your own voice and you don't like editing. Do you actually listen to the finished article back?
I'll always listen to the back just from a QA perspective. Because I always say to the guests as well, is there anything that you're unsure that you want to put out? Because once it's on Spotify, that's it. So I always give the chance for the guest to say, actually, at 46 minutes in, I said something that was potentially seen as racist or hate speech. But yeah, from a QA perspective, I always want to make sure that the audio quality is good, because that has to be the most important part of doing a podcast. The visuals can look fantastic, but if I sound like I'm currently underwater, then it's no good to anyone really, which is frustrating because I've put quite a lot of money into this setup that I'm recording on now. But yeah, go on. Sorry, you were saying something and I interrupted you.
No, it's cool. Just from that, QA kind of perspective, when you listen back, are you listening back as Ben from ABP podcast, ABP, or are you trying to listen to it as Ben from Dorset? Is it? Are
Yeah.
you listening to it as a product, or are you listening to it as someone who's going to absorb it, whether it be listening, whether it be watching the YouTube back?
I suppose I'm looking
What
at it
hat
from
you wearing?
a working perspective, because I want to always critique my fluidity when it comes to asking questions. And the only way I'm ever going to improve that is by sort of analysing. But yeah, in terms of listening to it as like a regular person, I suppose some episodes have that merit where you're all going in at the same level of knowledge. But yeah, I tend to listen to it back as a sort of, I don't know, kind of proud of what I've done, and I want to make sure it sounds as good as I thought it did when I was recording it.
Have there ever been any episodes that you've listened back to and you've thought, oh, I'd like to hear more of this? Again, actually, you've actually got, out of that product mindset, and you're looking at it as that, as say I would listen to it. You sort of gone, do you know what? I think I'd like to hear more of this, or possibly even less of this. What has there been ever any light bulb moments when you've been listening to something, you think that really works and I'm actually enjoying listening to this, and actually found yourself lost in what you're hearing?
Yeah, there's been a couple of times where I've kind of said to myself, I wish this was a bit longer. But where I do 2 Zoom meetings that are 40 minutes each, as we discovered earlier, Sam, I've got them, if they are genuinely successful and this is part of a press thing and their Outlook calendar looks like that, then I've got 1 hour and 20 minutes of their time, and then they're going to go off onto another Zoom meeting. So I tried to make those as concise as possible. But funny you should mention that, because the next episode I'm doing is 2 people that I really, really enjoyed speaking to, and I've actually got both of them on, and we're going to do a political debate. So I've got Mr. Mark Van Man Talks from Brighton, who I really enjoyed speaking to, and we didn't necessarily speak about politics when I had him on. We spoke about music for quite a lot. And I also had Angry Bootneck, who is a US political commentator on YouTube, and he has blown up since I spoke to him last, and that's one of my best performing episodes. So I've got this kind of triangle thing going on in 2 weeks where I'm acting as a mediator, and I'm going to say, right, you're both running for president. What would you do about housing? What would you do about traffic? What would you do about gun control? And it's going to be a fairly unhinged episode, because I don't think YouTube likes talking about gun control, but currently this channel isn't monetized. So it kind of gives me this free pass to talk about whatever I want. But in terms of hitting myself because I could have gotten more out of the episode, I think that's what you were kind of asking earlier. I'm pretty happy with everything that I've done so far, really. And I do keep a lot of people's numbers and email addresses so that if they have got something else further down their career, they know where I am. And I do kind of practice what I preach in terms of promotion. The editor that I did have a couple of months ago, called Marty, one of the best editors I've never actually met in real life. He is one of the best video editors I've ever come across, and he's in a band called And, which is AAND, and they used to be the band that would play in morph suits, really heavy metal. And they've just released a proper full-on music video, and it's really, really good. So go check that out, guys. I think the song's called Escape, off the top of my head. And I like sort of giving bands shout outs and promoting stuff post recording. So I've always got them on speed dial if I need to speak to them again. But in terms of like genuine quality of the episode and, oh shit, I should have asked that question. There's been a couple where I've just forgotten the last couple of questions. Sometimes the most harrowing thing about this job, in air quotes, job, is when Zoom comes up, because I use the free version. It's like 9 minutes remaining. And I'm like, shit, I've got like 5 questions to ask. And unless we answer every question in a minute, then something's going to have to get cut from this episode. So sometimes you got to make those decisions. And that's why I tend to use my phone as a notepad. So I've always got it near me. I've got a couple of things written down for this in a bit, actually, as well. So I suppose you've just got to be as prepared as possible. But there's definitely been times in the past where I've been like home for 3 minutes and I've got to record with someone. And this might be my only chance to record with them. Scott from Cancer Bats was a good example of that, where I just had to kind of get home, park the car, throw some crisps down my face and go up and eat dinner after the recording, you know? Because sometimes that's real life colliding with the fantasy of becoming the Poundland version of Joe Rogan. But yeah, I think that answers your question.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting going back to something you said, where obviously earlier you said you kind of wanted to be able to make some sort of a living out of this. You'd like for it to kind of be self-sustaining, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah.
But obviously, then when we've spoken about the future episodes you've got where you're going to be, going into this political realm with these, and you're acting as the mediator. You've obviously said you're kind of fly under the radar by what, say, YouTube will or won't allow.
Yeah.
Because you have that freedom because of where you are.
Yeah.
Sitting, sort of like asking yourself the other question, do you think you've missed the freedom that, say, you've got now? Because you have got carte blanche, really, to, within reason, to go and speak about whatever you want to. So if you want to speak to people about gun control or any other very taboo topics, you can, because despite the success you've had, you are still the size you are. Do you think when you get to where you want to be, that size wise, and you start meeting those restrictions, are you going to miss his freedom, or is it another challenge?
I think as long as you're upfront with what you're doing, like the only people that I'm beholden to currently are Spotify, kind of YouTube, as I've mentioned. I'm not monetized currently. And then I've got my sponsors. I've currently got 3 sponsors. Got a new one, which I'll announce tonight, which is North Muse Candles. I haven't got any of their candles yet, so I'm not doing a full-on ad read for them just yet because I haven't got any product. Go Energy and Shanty Spirit. And I've got their CEO's numbers. I can directly message them on WhatsApp, and they're happy basically with anything that I do, as long as it's not absolutely mental, like me showing up with a Ku Klux Klan hat on.
Yeah, don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that. I don't know. You got to be honest and upfront with what your intention is. And sometimes episodes do go mental, especially if you've got more than one guest on. So this political one that's coming down the road might go absolutely haywire, and they might start shouting at each other. But that's all part of the fun, So currently, I've got a lot of freedom to record with whoever I want. I've got a couple of record labels that have messaged me recently saying, "Do you want our roster open to you?" And I've said, "Yeah, but I can't just do recordings within a day because someone's about to release a new single." Because that's not how I work. I don't work in that kind of structure where it's fast and loose. I've got stuff up and coming until October for this year, for 2024. But I'll always try and fit people in as much as I can. But I am enjoying kind of being my own boss and being the master of my own destiny. But like I said earlier, the next step is actually getting people to really engage and comment. Hopefully stick around for the repeat, rather than popping in because Billy Sheehan's spoken to me and then popping off. But yeah, it's all good.
Yeah. So obviously,
Oh, you dropped off.
process was behind it.
There you are.
Still there?
Yeah, all good.
Cool. So, what are you listening to at the moment, podcast-wise? What catches your interest?
So I had a funny dream about this the other day, Sam. Joe Rogan DM'd me saying,
Oh,
I've noticed that you've not been listening to my podcast recently. The last 6 or 7 episodes I've done, Ben, like, where have you been? And I fucking thought this was real. So I obviously haven't got the DM, but I thought to myself the other day, how many podcasts do I listen to on a regular? Because I do a lot of driving at the moment for my job. And the amount of podcasts I follow on Spotify could probably sort me out until I'm about 70 years old. I listen to such a wide range of podcasts. Cheap Show, Whiskey Ginger with Andrew Santino, Parenting Hell, Rob Beckett and Josh Widdicombe, Diary of a CEO, High Performance, Sappenin podcast. I've just got all sorts. George Janko. He recently had Andrew Tate on. That was quite a good conversation. This past weekend with Theo Von, The Downbeat. Fuck me, is that 4 hour long? Joe Satriani, not quite. Joe Rogan, Impulsive with Logan Paul, Nick Nocturnal, who's kind of doing the rounds a bit at the moment on YouTube. He's quite a popular musician. Been listening to a lot of Russ Cook. He's been on quite a few podcasts recently. I don't know if you know who he is. He ran the entire length of Africa recently.
I think I have. Yes.
A bit mad. The Yard, which has got Ludwig in, who's quite a popular gamer on the internet. Tiger Belly with Bobby Lee. The Blind Boy podcast. I've been listening to him a lot recently because Shay from Devon Townsend's other project, Casualties of Cool, she recommended that I listen to him, and I haven't really stopped since we recorded Shay. So yeah, I'm fascinated by podcasting. Also, Incense podcast, which is a Pokemon Go podcast. They should hopefully get some Go energy soon. So yeah, I'm always listening to stuff constantly to the point where if I'm driving by myself, I won't really listen to music. I'll just listen to people. Jack Mate's Happy Hour as well. I can't not mention that. But when I've got my girlfriend and when I've got my son in the car, we revert back to listening to music. But I find that it's quite current. So the things that people are talking about when the episode drops, they're kind of trending, and there's a lot of opportunity for hot takes and opinions. And I quite like being in the know. So yeah, I've always got something going on. There's always
and all very
yeah.
always very different as well. It's not like I said with me. Mine tend to be quite route one, really, as per my general interest and just how dull I am, to be honest. But yeah, it's interesting that you sort of say you sort of take it in when you're driving. Is that obviously you're driving a bit for work, as you said.
Yeah.
Is that the main way you're kind of doing it now? Is it killing that time, or do you listen to podcasts in any other kind of sphere?
Sometimes if I'm going for a walk, I find them to be quite good. But I kind of have to plan my walk or my jog to suit the episode length. Because I don't like it when there's like 18 minutes of a podcast left. It feels like you're kind of leaving the room, but then you're going back into the room and you're like, wait, what are they talking about? What? Oh, the episode's finished. Oh, okay, cool, that was fun. So that's probably an OCD thing with trying to listen to everything in one sitting.
Yeah, I know what you mean, because I mean, I used to have a much longer commute to work. I used to have to probably about 35, 40 minutes, some days. Not the most sort of driving I've ever done in my working career, but that's what it was. And what I'd find is a lot of podcasts hit that kind of 60-minute mark.
Yeah.
So I'd say way to work, I'd have half of it, and then the drive home, I'd finish it. So that'd be it within a a working day, if you will, I'd clear it out, I'd finish it. Whereas now I have about a 15-minute drive to work, so it's, you know, those little bits and pieces, and I find myself in that situation, or I'll listen to them when I take the dog for a walk, and all of a sudden I usually go out with the dog for half hour, just over, and you'll have one of those podcasts which is something daft like 38 minutes, and I'll have 2 minutes left, and I know very well that those last 2 minutes are just them going, have we got anything else to talk about? No, not really. Okay, tune in next week or what have you. But I still have to listen to it, because otherwise it just hangs there, and I'm just like, I can't do that.
Yeah,
I can't. But
I know what you mean.
So podcasting, big thing for you. Obviously, it's what you big part of your life. Music, you mentioned. We are going to cover music in a bit. It would be remiss if we didn't. But what else does Ben get up to? I mean, aside from work, we'll ignore work.
Yeah,
don't care about that. Podcasting, we know you do that. But what else is in Ben's life that consumes his being?
So I've got 4 minutes left. So Casper, my son, hence why I look older than 34. He's asked me a lot of questions this last weekend regarding what kind of sandwich would I be if I was a sandwich. He keeps me busy, Sam, and sometimes the only way I can shut him up, to be completely honest, is either throw him in a bath or record with him, and then the world can see how chaotic he is. And I always, this is really important actually, ask him if he wants to record, because I don't ever want him feeling like he's a little machine or a little cog in the machine. There's quite a lot of accusations recently about a channel on YouTube which are absolutely massive called Ryan's Toy Reviews. And a lot of accusations came out about the kids being used as a sort of vehicle by the parents. And I don't want that, because if Casper wants to record, he'll either ask me, because we'll go to like a sweet shop and we'll find like a crazy drink, or he'll answer yes or no, depending on if I ask him. So he keeps me very busy. I want to get jogging again, because I've been a bit shit this year with that, because I've been working quite far out and it's not really allowed me. I've realised recently that I spend a lot of my life sat down, which is not good. Definitely need a standing desk at work. But yeah, just the usual stuff really, helping my girlfriend with stuff. She's been a bit ill recently with headaches and migraines, so just been trying to help her get her tablets and all that sort of stuff, and coming around John's, seeing what shit he's been up to, seeing what drama's in his life, because this is where I usually record in Wareham. And yeah, most of that really, seeing my family, seeing you and Jim now and then, if time and universe permits.
Yeah.
And yeah, just trying to keep my head above water and try and stay as socially active as possible, because doing this is fine, but it's virtual, so I'm still staring at a screen. So yeah, lots going on. I try to make as much time as possible for people. But yeah,
it's. I mean, this is, and I can see obviously we've just got over a minute left, but
yeah,
you're right. It's this. This is great, you know, but obviously from where ABP started, this was social. This was your social life.
Yeah.
You know, I worked with people in Sheffield at the time, and this is how we met up. But obviously the world has kind of, I'm not going to say got back to normal, because it's never been normal, but
yeah,
this is where we are now.
Yeah. Should we continue this in the next one?
I think we should.
I don't want things to just cut off. Sorry, I'm doing your job.
It's all right.
It's all right. We'll go to an ad break. Yep. Stay tuned, and we'll see you in the next one.
Do you need that extra burst of energy? Do you need motivation? Do you need that X factor? Well, Go Energy has you covered. Whatever gets your juices flowing. Whatever you need to let your hair down. Have a go at it all with Go Energy. Gluten-free, vegan-friendly, and no artificial additives. Goat Energy. Use code Bedlam10 at checkout.
And we're back. So I think I answered everything in the last one, but feel free to correct me as we just switched rooms.
I think, yeah, we are. I mean, the only thing I was going to ask you in around the kind of hobbies, I suppose you could say, sort of title, is there anything, not your running, because I know that's something you did, and certainly something we spoke about on a previous episode I was on, about how you really got into your running, and fair play to you, you did really well with it. Is there anything you would like to do that you've never done that you kind of think, yeah, actually, I'd like to give that a go?
I think your audio is a bit off. You sound a little bit like you're in an elevator. Let's just try this on the fly. You sounded great last time.
Yeah, it does sound a bit different, doesn't it?
Yeah. See, this is the stuff, guys. This is the stuff we don't see. This is all
Is any better
staying.
now?
Yeah, that's much better. Much
There we are.
better. Anything that
Glorious
what?
again.
Anything that I'd like to try that I haven't
Yeah.
tried previously?
Anything you've ever sort of, whether it be speaking to someone and they say, "Oh yeah, I've really enjoyed doing this. I find it, really relaxing," or something you've kind of gone, "Yeah, okay, I wouldn't mind giving that a go one day."
So there's a group of people that are associated with Go Energy. What's the guy's name? We have to find out. Basically, on Instagram, he's called the One Wheeler, and it's like a sort of skateboard that's a sort of urban, adapted, sort of all-terrain skateboard. I'll just find him now. I'd like to have a go on this. The One Wheeler, this guy. I don't know if you can see him very much, but I'll send you a link.
Thank you.
I don't know if we can see that. I think Zoom's going to mess it up. But it's a one-wheel skateboard.
Oh, I can just about see that.
Yeah.
That looks mad.
There you go.
And I'm ready to.
He's like going up and down a ramp. And I've notoriously always been really shit at skateboarding. It's all fun and games till you fall off and then you throw your toys out the pram and say, I'm not doing this anymore, I can't be Tony Hawk. I'd like to try that. And I think it would be a good opportunity to meet everyone from that community. Because Go sponsor some fantastic events. Some of it's like Tough Mudder and all that sort of stuff. So that's all good. I'd like to do a half marathon, which kind of ties in with the jogging. But I am petrified of commitment when it comes to that. Because once I've said I'm going to do it on the 14th of October, for example, I then have to make time every single week to train. And it's not even just training, it's also sorting your nutrition out and stopping the energy drinks, apart from Goat, because Goat's not like normal energy drink, guys. So yeah, I don't know. There's something about sports and the unknown. I certainly don't want to do rock climbing. That can fuck right off. I'm scared of heights, traditionally. I'd quite like to go on a... Is this limited to exercise? Or is it limited to anything?
No. Anything you want, man.
Okay, so right, real question, real answer. I want to do a ghost walk. I want to do some paranormal investigation. And I've hit up some pretty big names through Instagram. I've booked them in for October. Who are they? It's going to do my head in if I don't know. And yeah, just I want to do some more haunted stuff. I'm a massive, massive fan of Sam and Colby. as I've probably mentioned a couple of times on here before. And they are absolutely smashing the paranormal investigation game on YouTube. So yeah, just want to get out of my comfort zone a bit and just do stuff that's a bit left of center. Aha. Kent Paranormal Explorers. Urban exploration and paranormal investigation. There's a couple of others as well in here, but yeah, I think I've always been quite fascinated with the paranormal. I think that would be a good thing to do. Never seen anything in the last 10 years at least that's scared the shit out of me in person. I've seen a couple of weird YouTube videos. But yeah, I just kind of want to give people their flowers, really. Small YouTube channels that potentially haven't broken through, similar to me. If I think people have got genuine potential, then I want to help shine a spotlight on them. Yeah, so half marathon and paranormal exploration. And I'm willing to travel. There's a place quite close to where we are, Sam, called Rendlesham Forest, if you've ever heard of that.
I haven't actually.
It's a UFO crash site.
Oh wow!
So it's like the UK version of Roswell. So yeah, be up for going to a couple of places like that with a couple of other YouTubers. It's always good to meet people as well, like in the real world, rather than just on Zoom. So yeah, there's a couple of things that I've got in the pipeline. There's a couple of things I want to go to with John as well, my business partner. But he's got his kids a lot, and he's flat out at work. And sometimes he straight up says no to me, rather than leading me down a path and then flakes out on me at the last week. But yeah, life's pretty good. Just need to do more stuff. We've all got the same amount of time. So yeah.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, looking at that paranormal kind of side, tell me, where's your fascination come from with that?
So in the last couple of years, I've realised that I have quite bad anxiety at certain points. I don't like it when stuff like sideswipes me, and I don't like it when things aren't planned. I've always been a bit of a structure-driven human being. But on the flip side of that, a lot of paranormal stuff is the unknown, and it's your eyes playing tricks on you, and it's going into a dark room, and it's, potentially something tapping on a wall next to you, and you either believe it or you don't. Obviously, there's a bit of confirmation bias to a lot of this. But I kind of allow, within my sort of code of ethics, I allow those things to be unplanned because they're completely like not of this world. So I don't tend to get too anxiety ridden in those situations. Plus, a lot of the times you're with a group of people. So if like someone hears something, if they're a really annoying person, they'll start screaming, and that might make someone else start screaming, and then everyone starts running around in chaos, and everyone's a bit manic. But yeah, I want to know if it's real. I've watched a lot of compelling footage online, but I just don't think there's anything quite like being there and seeing it first. There's a lot of really cynical people on YouTube that just completely disarm all of it. They all think, it's all rubbish. But I do think some of the stuff that I've seen has some weight to it and it holds some water. But yeah, that started when my nan in Chester, she openly admitted that she had a haunted house and that she had a ghost. And I went down, I don't know why I did this, I was probably like 7 or 8. And I went downstairs in her fairly big house in Chester. And I feeling a bit hoarse in the middle of the night. I went downstairs to get a glass of water. And I don't know now, because obviously this is like 27 years ago, if I either saw a woman in Victorian clothing against the sink, or if I just heard something. It sounded like someone was crying. But when you're a kid, you don't give a shit. So I went up to the sink, poured myself a glass of water, went back upstairs and went back to sleep. And ever since then, I always thought to myself, there's definitely something else, like after, because I think it's quite bleak feeling that nothing is waiting for you. So maybe it's a sort of unconscious answer to that question of, what happens when we pass away? What happens to our soul when what happens to the energy contained within us, So maybe it's that.
Do you think there's something after death, or do you just hope there is?
I've seen a lot of stuff, like I said, so I'm leaning more towards the fact that I think it's real, but I'm also happy to be proven otherwise. But yeah, I don't know, just I think seeing is believing and hearing is believing. But when people upload stuff to YouTube, they want clicks and views. They don't necessarily want to show you the truth, They want to show you the most shocking thing, like someone falling down the stairs. Most Haunted were, notorious for that. It was all bollocks. Derek and Cora got possessed every episode. So yeah, I think I just want that sort of safety and stability of knowing that something happens afterwards, and that we potentially get like a second chance if people believe in stuff like reincarnation. But I don't consider myself to be very religious. So yeah, I'm not really sure, to be completely honest. It's all a bit ethereal and a bit strange.
I mean, a question that was going to come up later, which I'm going to jump forward now because I think it fits quite nicely, and I'm going to change it slightly. So that, again, the original question was going to be later: if you could have one day with anyone, alive or dead, who would it be? But now I'm going to change that, and we'll say that afterlife is real and it's there, and you had the opportunity to spend a day with someone from that afterlife. So they come back, and it's just, say, you and them in a room. Who would you want to come back to spend the day with, and why?
I think it would be a musician. It would either be David Bowie, just because I think he's a fascinating person. I never got to see him live. Chester Bennington, same reason, and his constant strive towards just being nice and being very professional and always doing singing and warm-ups and stuff outside of playing. Or Chris Cornell. Thought he was quite an interesting character. I don't think he ever really gave himself any credit for any of the work that he did. There's probably a couple more. There's probably a couple of people that after recording I'll be like, shit, why didn't I mention this person? Probably family members as well, because I've always found people pass away kind of too quickly. Once people start, what's the word, deteriorating, they fall off a cliff a little bit. But in a way, you don't want your nan suffering for 9 months. So
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd like to meet my granddad again, I suppose, because I didn't really get a chance to bond with him. I was very young and he was very old. Yeah, I don't know. Potentially the odd pet, but I don't really know what they do. They'd just be a cat. They wouldn't give a shit about humans. They never have. Yeah. Don't know. No one's ever asked me that before, so lots of answers.
Yeah, lots of answers. Right, we move on from that now, and we will jump into the world that kind of brought us together, I suppose you could say, which is our love of music.
Yep.
Tell me your earliest musical memory.
Okay. As a musician or just in general?
Just in general.
Earliest musical memory. Probably when my mum had a lot of her friends over in like a flat. Um, Probably Oasis. Just listening to the Definitely Maybe CD on repeat and singing along to it, not really knowing what the lyrics meant. And it's like, her soul slides away. Just everyone in the room, like, singing along, and kind of felt a bit like a weird time to be alive. Like it was a sort of Britpop invasion of people smoking, drinking inside, people watching football, people listening to Oasis, Pulp, Blur, Top of the Pops. And it sort of gave everyone a bit of an individualism and a sort of fight the power sort of mentality. And it always starts at home, doesn't it? And it manifests itself in various different ways after the home. But yeah, that's my earliest one I can think of.
So when you look back at that moment now, whether it be as you're talking about it or if you're ever just thinking about music and sort of thinking about what music was like as a kid, can you see how that's sort of shaped who you are musically today, whether it be as a musician or just a fan of music?
Not really. I always found in school there was a definitive decision that every student had to make, which was, am I a footballer or am I a musician? And it very much felt to me like you go one direction or the other direction. So some of the best guitarists I've ever met, Gary Seal, they would go down the footballer path. And I'd really struggle with that because they're so naturally talented at the end of their bed. And they would decide to do the other thing. So I always played music as a response to my dad, who was very much on the train of football. Gillette Soccer Saturdays, every single Saturday, every time I'd ever go around there, every time I ever stayed around his house, it would be on the TV. It would be burnt into the fucking screen. So I kind of picked music as a rebellious thing of like sort of Rage Against the Machine, like fuck you, I wait till you tell me. And it was a lot harder that way because there's no guitar lying around in the flat, there's no drum kit lying around in the spare room. I had to buy everything myself. I had to teach myself bass. I had to sort of save up money and earn the guitar lessons. And the guitar lessons were nearly as expensive as driving lessons, if memory serves. So I was very much a self-starter when it came to music. And I think if anyone is even slightly thinking about music, the best advice I can give anyone, this is coming from not really a professional musician, is join a band. Just join a band, get in a rehearsal room, and be shit. Because you'll learn a lot more from gelling with other people and jamming with other people than sat at the end of your bed thinking, am I good enough? So yeah, very not turbulent, but I made that decision quite early on that I wanted to make as much noise as possible. And I think if you look at it from a psychological perspective, that's why I've joined a podcast. That's why I've started doing a podcast, is because people can't tell you to shut up if you're making your own noise. So it's kind of like a reaction to potentially my parents telling me to be quiet and sit down, as most parents do. I'm sure you're aware, Sam. Sometimes your kids are just fucking going at you. So I think in a way, it's allowed me to have a voice. So yeah, there's probably something to that.
So obviously you mentioned that you started yourself but obviously you've gone out and you've got your own bass guitar. I've always known you as a bass player. I've always been a bass player predominantly. There's another thing we kind of sort of bonded over. But who inspired you to pick up a bass guitar? Because let's be honest, bass is not the glamorous instrument. Let's be honest. Why pick 4 strings over 6?
So I started on 6, started on guitar very briefly. I realised I was very bad at it. And if you want to be a good guitar player, you have to really stick your nose on the grindstone. There was a thing recently where Slash said he had to practice for 12 hours a day when he first started playing guitar. Bass doesn't really feel that much pressure. Plus, I realised quite quickly when I was going to join a band, there were singers and guitarists everywhere. You couldn't move for them. But if you wanted to find a drummer or a bassist, you'd have to look very hard. Drummers, because they're usually in 7 or 8 bands already. So their time was very limited. Bass, it's always been seen as the support and the foundation of the band. And I've always been incredibly reliable to a fault. So I felt like it suited me a bit more. And who inspired me? Jesus. Going back to Steve Vai live at the Astoria, that was quite an inspirational moment, watching that DVD. Billy Sheehan. But he was just like all over the show, like very hard to keep up with. So I couldn't learn any of his stuff. Bit of John Deacon from Queen. Potentially the bassist of Michael Jackson. I can't even really remember his name, bless him. All sorts of music. Just Flea from Red Hot Chili Peppers. I think he's a bit of a gateway. And what's his name from Linkin Park? Do you know his name?
Phoenix.
Yeah. Is it Darryl Phoenix?
Something like that, yeah.
Let's have a look. I want to get this right. I think he's got a podcast if he's listening. Want to know what's going on with Linkin Park, mate?
There's rumours.
Dave Phoenix Farrell.
There we go.
Yeah, he's got a podcast called Member Guest Official. Yeah. Yeah, just a myriad of different things going on. But I really enjoyed like listening to a song like Under Pressure or Another One Bites the Dust, trying to figure it out in my head, then going on ultimateguitar.com and realizing that what I was playing was wrong, and then relearning it. And I think that's actually quite an important lesson in life, really. Is you're not going to learn everything by ear. Sometimes you have to refer to manuals and you have to ditch what you've currently learned in order to relearn. It can get quite frustrating, but it's worth it. I've probably listened to a lot more bands as well, like Billy Talent, Slipknot, Franz Ferdinand, Editors, The Bravery, all sorts. Hard-Fi, remember them?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, just whatever was on. But I'd always go to like HMV or MVC and buy the CDs.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
So look, you've obviously mentioned as one of the sort of people inspiration as such was Dave Farrell, Phoenix from Linkin Park. We are going to go there. New metal.
Yeah.
How much of a gate? Yeah.
Yeah.
How much of a gateway genre was new metal for you?
Oh, I think Hybrid Theory changed everything, and I think most people. I listen to a lot of musician podcasts. I listen to a lot of interviews, and everyone seems to gravitate towards that one album, Hybrid Theory by Linkin Park. Also, Life is Peachy by Korn.
Yeah.
It just changed the way people listen to music and the sort of downbeat hopelessness of it, rather than it being like everything's gonna be fine. It was like, no, everything's not gonna be fine. And it's important that you understand that because life is pretty brutal and very good at intertwining sort of lyrics and melodies and riffs. I don't know what song, but sorry, I don't know what album the song "Here to Stay" is on, Corn-wise. But
That's from Untouchables.
is that the first Untouchables? Because there's a couple, isn't there?
Mm,
Or is it just the one?
just the one.
Because I remember getting a 5 string and thinking, oh, I can learn this. Finally, I've been allowed to pick this up. And just how sort of unapologetically heavy new metal is. And there's not really a genre like it. I remember hearing, actually, System of a Down, Chop Suey, and I remember listening to Slipknot Duality because they were on Scuzz and Kerrang back in the day, and it was just this cascading thing where you didn't really have a choice of what you listened to. And I remember thinking, this is the heaviest music I'm probably ever going to hear in my lifetime. Chop Suey by System of a Down and Duality, Wait and Bleed by Slipknot when they're in the forest.
Yeah.
And I thought, this is like the start of a new like revolution of music. I remember hating it as well at one point. I was like, it's just screaming. You always hear that thing, don't you, from all the sporty kids at school.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just shouting. I can't hear what the lyrics are.
Yeah.
But it's like that's the point, is it's like someone's like in pain and like they want to grieve and get through it, and this is the only way that they can work through their stuff. So yeah, fantastic genre of music. Got
Yeah.
bands like Mudvayne. Yeah, all good.
Yeah. It's one of those. Sorry, I've just been joined by a dog,
Good.
which is
No worries.
great. Ellie, go. Good girl. Yeah, it's one of those genres that is so. Again, it's just very wide sphered, isn't it? Because you say, what is new metal essentially? What are the elements that make up new metal? And you look at all the big new metal bands from that late 90s, early noughties kind of period, and none of them are the same. You look at the big bands from the new metal era, Korn, you've already mentioned, Biscuit. Just go with those two.
Yeah.
What have they got in common apart from down-tuned riffs that are heavy? Jonathan Davis and Fred Durst, both very different deliveries. The whole sound is different. DJ Lethal is not in Korn; he's in Limp Bizkit. It's very. You then talk about Slipknot, Deftones. I can turn around and I can look. POD. A lot of those bands probably wouldn't even fit into the sphere of new metal, but
Yeah.
they were, whether they wanted to be or not.
Yeah.
But there's been a bit of a resurgence of new metal in the last probably couple of years or so, and I think we've had the discussion before where one thing I like watching on YouTube personally is the reaction videos. And I had one pop up the other day, and it was teens react to new metal. And I thought, okay, this could be a bit of a giggle. And they were playing clips of new metal songs to teenager, I don't know what kind of late teens, mid teens, whatever, and just watching them react and then working out that, these songs are like 20 years old, 22 years old or something. And these kids are going, wow, this is amazing. We've never heard anything like this before. And actually that gave me a real kind of good feeling because like you were saying, it was very much your football, your sport, or your music. Now, I kind of very much drove down the middle of that line
Yeah.
as much as I could because they're two of my big passions. But when I was at school, I was wearing a West Ham shirt and that was underneath a Corn hoodie. So it was still very much, but there weren't many like that. Not a lot of us did that. You were a certain way. But actually seeing people now coming into it and sort of saying, this is actually really good. I'm really liking this. It sounds good. It almost makes me feel like I'm vindicated as such, for loving that genre, which I do shamelessly. POD's new album arrived the other day. But looking at music in general and all your sort of like encompassing love for music, if you had to, and I know you may have done this with other bands or other musicians that you've spoken to previously, if you had to pick a band of your favorite musicians, who are you picking?
As a supergroup?
As a supergroup. I mean, if you want them to, all fit a certain genre, like a play an instrument, fine, go with that.
Dropped off. You back? Sorry.
Yeah,
you're back.
I'm back. I can hear you.
Cool. So, supergroup that I can think of musician-wise. I think I need to give Limp Bizkit their flowers because I just completely forgot to mention them in the new metal conversation. I don't know why. I'd say Wes Borland would be a good guitarist. Don't know how malleable he is. I know he's in a couple of the bands. There was one called Black Red Burns or something like that he was the leader of.
Yes.
Black Light Burns.
Black Light Birds, that's it, yeah.
So I think he'd play quite nicely with Duff McKagan from Guns N' Roses.
Okay,
one of my
yeah.
favourite musicians of all time. Drummer Chad Smith from the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Singer Andy Branch from 13 Dice. Oh God, who's a good singer? Vessel from Sleep Token, whoever he is. But that could be quite cool.
Yeah.
Quite moody, with a bit of Wes on the side. I am also a massive, massive fan, as you probably know, Sam, of Dave from In Me.
Yes.
He's got some fucking versatile pipes on him. So yeah, that's guitarist, bassist, drummer, singer. I don't think Wes would play very nicely with other guitarists. I was going to go for someone like Joe Satriani or Paul Gilbert, but I'm going to leave it there as a four-piece. So yeah, see what they come up with. There's also this weird paradox as well that I've noticed with supergroups where the musicians that are in the band are too good. So they almost don't create anything because they're constantly trying to refine other people's material. So sometimes supergroups don't quite work because everyone's so proficient at their own instrument.
Can you think of a supergroup that has worked?
Chicken Foot, which is Joe Satriani's other band, with Sam Hagar. I think Chad Smith, funnily enough.
Yeah, I think he was on. Yeah.
Another supergroup that works. Audio Slave?
That's a very good shout. Yeah, very good shout.
Other than that, I can't really think of any. There was one called the Neurotic Outsiders. And I think the guy from Stone Temple Pilots might have been in that.
Okay.
Or Chester Bennington, not sure. Do you know Chester Bennington was in Stone Temple Pilots for a bit?
He was, yes.
That's quite a weird mix of everything, but apparently he's one of the biggest Stone Temple Pilots fans ever. So when Scott Wayland passed away, Chester was straight in those DMs. So yeah, fair play to him. But yeah, what about you? So we got 4 minutes left. Who's your favourite supergroup?
Oh, favorite supergroup. I mean, I probably would say Audio Slave are probably up there. I'm trying to think desperately and I'll probably do a you, and I'll probably think, oh, why on earth did I not say this band? Because they're amazing. Oh no, yeah, no, I think Audio Slave. It's difficult to top that because they, especially that first album and even that first track, when it kind of comes in is just, there's nothing like it. What I do quite like with some albums is when you get, to give one example, Mark Morton from Lamb of God, and he released a solo album. Obviously, he's written all the music, writes all the songs, and just goes out and goes, Chester, I'd like you to be on this track, please. Jacoby from Papa Roach, can you be on this one, please? There's a guy called, I think it's Mark Morales, who was in a band called Sons of Texas. Yeah, can you do a couple of tracks on here? And I really like that. I know Slash again done it previously on an album of his, and I think he's got a new album coming out as well where similar. Yeah, he's got Chris Stapleton on one track, and I think he's got others, because a Slash track that I think no one would have seen coming was when he did a track with Fergie of Black Eyed Peas fame. And that was a really, really good track. And actually, and I like Fergie, who's not known as a rock singer, then going in that really worked well and makes you kind of look at it and think, wow, that's when someone's got a real talent, when they can take their skills from another genre and kind of come into a new one and go, let's play with that.
Definitely. I think Velvet Revolver are worth a shout as well as a supergroup.
Yes, no, that's a very good one. Yeah, I'm going to spin round now.
Sorry, got 2 minutes left if you want to ask me another one.
Yeah, go on then. We'll chuck one more. How I've got a feeling I know the answer to this, but how do you like to consume your music?
I like listening to whole albums all the way through. I've kind of ventured into playlist land on Spotify recently, but me and my girlfriend have got a playlist on Spotify called the Knee Slapper 2023, and that's for like road trips.
Nice.
And it just means I don't have to worry about the songs. I just let the playlist play. Don't have to worry about it. But when I listen to instrumental music like Cloud Kicker, he's just emailed me actually whilst we're recording, which is quite strange. And who else? Russian Circles, Joe Satriani, all of that. I like listening to it as it was recorded and as it was sequenced as a track list. But yeah, I quite like beginning to end as much as possible.
Are you now digital, or do you still get the odd CD?
No, I've still got some CDs. I've still got them in the boot of the car, but I don't really know what to do with them now.
I mean, as you can possibly see,
they're quite static, aren't they?
They are,
sort of sit there.
They do now, unfortunately. It's like they get downloaded onto my computer, and then that's about it. They go on the phone, and that's it.
That's it. Right, we'll go to recording number 3. And cheers for listening if you are listening already, guys. And speak to you in the next one. I'll see you in a second, Sam, all right?
What? Where? Why?
Okay, so we're approaching the end of the Ben interview. So you've got 40 minutes left to hit me with your best shot. I do have a funny thing as well that I want to mention in self-reflection of this podcast, which is the funniest fuck-up I've experienced. So I don't know if you want to go with that now, or we want to.
Let's do it. Let's run with it now.
So before the job that I've currently got, I worked in the NHS, and I was rebuilding laptops in my little work area. And something that I'm quite embarrassed about mentioning now is I used to watch my podcast back on YouTube on these laptops that I just built, and it would bump up my views, which is a mental way to bump up your views because these episodes are about an hour and a half long. So if it was like a YouTube short and it was like 20 seconds, then you could obviously pump the numbers up really quickly. So I kicked off the Sean Smith from the Blackout episode, put my speakers on mute, quickly popped to the toilet, came back, and I can hear from the main lobby, that's how loud it was, this Welsh guy fucking screaming and swearing, and I thought, what the fuck has happened here? So I ran into the room, I found the laptop that was making the noise, and I found out that the audio jack that I was listening to the episode back had slightly come out. So it started playing the episode, the Sean Smith episode, on these speakers. And luckily, it was a fairly quiet day in the office, but it's a massive open plan area. So there could have been like 4 or 5 people, or potentially even a bank of staff, listening to the Welsh person shout. And I thought, fuck me, that was a close call. And there was someone walking past, and she looked at me and said, bloody hell, your radio station of choice is a bit mad. And I thought to myself, fuck me, I'm not doing this again. I can't be putting up with the risk that Sean Smith's put me under. But I thought that was quite a funny story. So yeah,
I like that.
few of them. Yeah.
Any more you want to share with the group?
There was one that really annoyed me, which is 100% my fault. I'll put my hand up, fully accountable. But I recorded with Preston Echo, who I'm wearing a shirt of if you're not watching this on YouTube. And they just released an album called Transmute, and it was actually their last album before they split up. And I had the singer Luke come on the podcast really early doors. Like, this was like the 10 or 20th episode I'd ever done. And I'd contacted Marshall Records, I'd sorted it all out, and I was fucking terrified that, you know, the meeting or the recording wasn't going to go to plan, and I didn't have a microphone. I was just completely raw dogging it with the webcam that was built into the laptop. And I recorded an episode with Luke from Preston Echo to promote Transmute, and the recording got corrupted. And I was just like, for fuck's sake, like, you know, not to sound too insensitive, but I would have rather that the recording corrupted on some lesser episodes so that I could contact my friends and say, oh, let's do another one because the last one broke. And that just made me, you know, sometimes when like you think you've saved your document at work and there's that moment of like, oh my God, my dog's eating my homework. What the fuck am I going to do? It was like that, but it was like hobby centric.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my only opportunity to speak to Luke. And it had gone. You know, they were on an album tour. So that was my window of opportunity. And unfortunately, the window got smashed. Then I spoke to the other guy from Preston Echo that did interviews, called Jake Crawford. The episode's still up now on YouTube and Spotify. And he was one of the worst guests I ever had. And I told him that as well. Because he just completely took over the whole episode for an hour, just promoting all of his stuff, letting him have the floor, letting him talk about all of his stuff. And he did absolutely no promotion to the episode. Did absolutely nothing. Didn't even share an Instagram story, Sam. I was livid. And unfortunately, in this industry, you do get people like that. You do get people that come on, They promote their stuff, and then they ghost you. They don't follow you back on Instagram. They don't message you back once you've messaged them. And it's all just a bit shit. It's part of the course. And it's important to realise that those people aren't necessarily your friends. They're kind of just using you as a tool for promotion. But when you're only 4 years in, it kind of feels a bit personal, which is why earlier when you asked me in 5 words, I said sensitive. Because that does bother me. And I've always found that the episodes that I do perform best when both people are promoting it. That's when the views go mental. That's when stuff starts popping off. And that's the sweet spot that you want. But there's very, very few people, unfortunately, that actually meet you halfway. Let's put it that way. So, yeah, there you go.
And yet you're still repping their merch, and they're not even going anymore.
Laundry day, mate. No, I like this shirt. It's actually quite nice. Yeah, I realised a couple of weeks back that I was kind of just wearing the same shirts for recording. Now that I'm a public figure, whatever the fuck that means, you know, I'm always wearing the Defences shirt with brown camo, or I'm wearing the Vans shirts. So thought I'd mix it up a bit.
No, fair play. Why not? So we have got one rather big topic left to go, but before that, I'm just going to go a little bit off piste here. And I was out to dinner with my family last night, and of course, they were aware. Well, my kids weren't, but anyway, that I was going to be speaking to you today. And I said, I need some questions. You know what? Well, so I could talk to Ben about podcasting. I can talk to him about music. I said, but what else can I really ask? And so I've got 2 further questions here to ask you. The first one comes from Jack, age 7 of Dorset. What's 9 times 9?
81.
Now, if he was still awake, then I will confirm that. I'm just going to confirm it. It's 81. Look at that.
Straight away. So my son's been asking me random. My son's been asking me random timetables. Genuinely, one of the best things that I took away from school, really.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Jack has an ability for maths, which he did definitely not get from me. It's hence why I've just had to double check that just to make sure. I probably should have checked beforehand, but there you go. I'm not as prepared as you. And the next one comes from Laura, who is age not to be disclosed in a public forum, nice. Also from Dorset. If you were a dinosaur, what would you be?
Oh yeah. Deep questions.
Yeah, that's what you got me here for.
I think T-Rex, just because they're so funny. They're like killing machines, but their arms are like that. There's a comedic value to the fact that they were created like that, you know?
Yeah.
I am quite a big fan of Jurassic Park, but I also like the little sort of ankle biter ones that get the fat bloke in the first film, because he's got the sort of can of deodorant, spray can. He's got the amber. I don't think it's the ankle biters actually. They've got like massive fans.
Yeah, I know.
And they spit at you, and they sort of wear you down, and slowly take control rather than just ripping your head off, you know. But I can't remember what they're called, so I'm sure there's some paleontologists that listen to this, and they're going to let me know.
Yeah, well, that's next.
Oh yeah,
next guest to add on.
Yeah.
in the November schedule, get a paleontologist on. They love the Jurassic Coast. So the way we obviously met, as I alluded to earlier, was through music, Download Festival.
Yeah.
Was it 2009 or 2007? 2009.
2009.
Yeah. And obviously then sort of getting back into Dorset as we all did, and then meeting up a lot. Bands going to gigs. You used to come to our band practices.
Yeah.
You were a big supporter of us then, and then obviously we had the heady days of Hourglass Promotions,
Yeah.
sort of hitting Weymouth, with Sepultura, just from out of nowhere. Oh yeah, they're going to be playing Weymouth Pavilion. Right, okay, of course they are. They're
Yeah,
massive.
why
And I
wouldn't
can
they?
remember, yeah, I can always remember when they walked on stage. My friend
Yeah.
Scott, who obviously you've interviewed previously on the pod, just turned around to me and went, "Is it them? Is it actually them, or has it all been a lie?" I went, "No, that's them. They are here." And certainly that was, from our kind of point of view, I suppose, as music fans, that was a golden age really for the Weymouth music scene
Yeah, definitely.
of modern times, because you did have some really decent bands, turn up, to the extent that I can remember going to watch Sabaton playing Weymouth Pavilion.
Mad.
I've since seen them at Wembley Arena.
Yeah.
It's crazy to think that, and actually, the band lineup they have, Sabaton have now, as of today, is the lineup they had then. There has been a guitarist in between that's changed, but it is back to that lineup that was in Weymouth. And to stand there in Weymouth and see this band, and then go to Wembley and go, "I've heard this song in the pavilion,"
small area.
was crazy. But you've spoken previously, again on podcasts I've been on, about your time with Hourglass, and how you sometimes, when you go to gigs even now, your experiences with Hourglass do sometimes affect you when you look at, say, venues or the way sort of things are set up. Does that still happen? Do you still get a level of anxiety from sort of going to gigs and just sort of thinking about everything that goes on behind the scenes, or
I don't think that's
moved
ever
past that?
really going away. It's not necessarily an anxiety, it's just a deep sort of awareness of environment. And if you've only got one exit, then that might cause problems if there's a emergency. And I spoke to Derek from the Walk Show, who's another podcast that I sporadically listen to. Hello, Derek. How are you? And he used to be in events, so we kind of trauma bonded over that. And I don't know. It's good to know where stuff is, and where the merch tables are and where the toilets are and all that sort of stuff. But I do tend to go to gigs. I'm actually going to see In Me on Thursday in Bournemouth. Talk about that in a second, actually, as well, because that was something I had to learn. We'll go back to that in a minute. So, I still really enjoy gigs. I still really enjoy going as a punter. Quite a lot of opportunities have come up through the podcast of getting on VIP lists, getting on guest lists, and all that sort of stuff, and all that. I've recently been sent some stuff by MC Lars, some merch and some CDs as well, which is always nice. But I quite like going to all-day festivals now, but I'm definitely getting a bit too old now. I'm starting to feel a bit tired after the fourth band. But I can definitely go as a spectator and a visitor rather than a paid member of staff. But it's very difficult to see things as they are once you've previously seen the back end and how fucking hard some of these people work. They work 14-hour days for us to go into the venue for 2 hours, and then we leave without a care in the world. Someone's dismantling that stage after the band's played. The band's been there for 6 hours sound checking. you know, there's a lot that goes into events that people don't necessarily realize or appreciate. And I've tried not to throw that all the way. I've tried to sort of level up with that information rather than letting it fall. But yeah.
Do you think that means you enjoy gigs on a slightly different level to say most people? Because a lot of people will go to gigs because they like the music, they like the band, and they're just like, yeah, right, going to go there. We're going to have probably one too many beers. We're going to, if it's metal, we're just going to hit the mosh pit. We're going to act like a bit of a dick. And then we go home or we head to the pub and that's it. And they're just there, music plays, they enjoy the gig. It's like the people that turn up for the headliner, if that's who they're there for.
Yeah.
They turn up for the band and then go, right, yeah, come on, we'll just disappear off the pub now. And they're not, you're kind of now looking at them and going, I know that, you know, whether it be big arenas or smaller clubs or whatever, someone has had to get there, has had to set up this stage. And then when the gig's done at 10:30, 11 o'clock and everyone's cleared out, you don't get a rest. You know, you've then got to take it down, load it back in, and maybe start driving. Because you've got to get to the next place.
Completely. I think gigs are for everyone. There's varying levels of people that go to gigs. Some go to gigs because their mates have got tickets. Some go to gigs because they want to follow a band on tour, which is like the complete opposite end of that spectrum. I'll always try to speak to the musicians at like a stage door or in passing. Recently had Wolf on here who opened for Busted last year for like 30 dates. And I was straight on Instagram DMing them after the show saying I really enjoyed your set. Hit me up if you want to get interviewed. So yeah, I've kind of, in a way, I've turned my appreciation of events into a vehicle for the podcast. I tend to take water out of one container and put it into another, just because that's the way I work. But yeah, there's always going to be a couple of dickheads at shows. Anywhere that sells alcohol, you know, it's a bit of a roll of the dice, isn't it, sometimes?
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely feel like I appreciate musicians and the crew and the guitar tech and the security a lot more than most people, because I see the back end and I see the lots of standing around and being on your feet for 10 hours a day. It's not for everyone, being a roadie.
No.
So yeah, I think I've got a bit more of an appreciation, not trying to sound like I know more than everyone, but yeah.
At the beginning of this podcast, I asked you to describe yourself in 5 words, which you did. You know, tenacious, sensitive, hardworking, reliable, competent. Okay? I'm not going to question those. If I'd have asked you to do it in, say, 10 words, would you have been able to come up with 10 words to describe yourself, do you think?
I probably would have just strengthened the 5 words that I gave you. Otherwise, I just feels like I'm rambling.
Or ranting and raving with Ben.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Only reason I ask is, as we've gone along, I've been making notes about some of the different things you've kind of said, because one thing that when I was on last with Chris, we discussed at length was mental health, because Chris was quite open and honest about where his mental health was at that time. And looking at sort of some of the different bits and pieces you've kind of brought up throughout this, it's been, you know, reconnecting with friends was, you know, one of the bases for actually starting the podcast, you know, trying to, you know, prove yourself that you could do this. And then we've got other bits where it's just all about being social. You know, you've discussed the beehive, the community, being outside your comfort zone, and a lot of this is all about very much pushing yourself to be, you know, pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. Why are you doing that? I'm going to assume to improve yourself, being out there, getting more of the community, strength, togetherness. That's what I'm getting. So what is it behind you that is driving that? Is it, I suppose it goes in line with, is the glass half full or half empty? Are you pushing yourself to be the best you can be? Are you aiming for that top of the mountain, going, yeah, I'm going there? Or is it the fear that if you don't push yourself to the top of that mountain, you are going to fall down it?
It used to be very fear driven. It's a good question. I like that one. It used to be, if you don't upload every week, no one's going to give a shit and everyone's going to forget about you. Considering this is a hobby and this is a non-profit organization currently, I've flipped it a little bit, and I've said to myself, I want to get to the top of the mountain, whatever that means. I don't even really know what that means nowadays with anything. I want to be Joe Rogan. He's the top of the mountain. But an overnight success is actually something that's usually 9 or 10 years in the making. People don't really blow up like you think online. You know, occasionally you get the people like the Cash Me Outside girl from Dr. Phil, who hasn't got any back catalogue of content. But a lot of these people, like, let's use a comedian as an example, Matt Rife, if you've heard of him. The reason he's such a successful young comedian is because he's worked his ass off. And, you know, there comes a sense of luck meeting preparation. When you get an opportunity, you take it with both hands. But the chances of you getting the opportunity completely cold and completely blind are quite rare. You might not be prepared, so you might fumble. So my opportunity right now, my existence right now in terms of podcasting is to just be as ready as possible for things going crazy. Like if Spotify want to sign this, then obviously I'd negotiate a value with them. But I do back what I'm doing, and that's where sort of earlier I was moaning a little bit about the viewership and the numbers not being as good as what I think they can be. But yeah, sometimes you've just got to go back and realize why you started doing it, because there's two things that I've learned in the last year, which is everything is how you react to everything else, and no one's going to give a shit about you more than you. So as long as you're just enjoying doing stuff, then really that should be the beginning and the end of your own dream. If people want to come along with you on the ride, that's great. But if this starts to feel like work for me, and I start employing people to edit stuff and they're not potentially pulling their weight, then that's when I start sort of associating this with a job. And that's when it stops being fun. So just do stuff because you enjoy it. It's all about intent. You know, do I want to get rich and famous? Not really. Sometimes that sounds like hell, being famous, being stopped in the street, you know. But yeah, just do stuff because it's fun. There could be a mountain, but I'm not really focusing on that right now. I'm just trying to get better every week at interviewing people. And a lot of that comes from research and making notes and listening to past interviews that someone's done previously and trying to get them, you know, answering different questions. So yeah.
Because one thing that certainly strikes me is you've kind of explained, is one of the things about you is I've put you don't like change, or you prefer structure. You've put that, you know, you are, as you said earlier, you're enjoying being your own boss with this. You are doing your schedules. You know what's coming up. You know you've got your 40 minutes.
Yeah.
on your Zoom call to then ad break will come in, da 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 da.
Yeah.
And I think it was interesting when we were talking about the paranormal earlier. I thought it was very interesting that you also put or you even said you want to know if it's real.
Yeah.
For that simple fact that fits in very much with everything else you've said, because you want that structure, you need that. And as anyone that's been listening or watching this will know, there's been bits where you're like, oh, who is that guy? I need to know.
Yeah.
Having it out there dangling and being a what if is not in your realm, so it has to be real. But what I find interesting is the fact that where you want that structure and you like that structure in place and you are your own boss, at the same time you have even mentioned that it's kind of okay to ask for that help, and you've learned that you need that help. So I'll go back to my mountain analogy. Ben's walking up slowly, he's going up that mountain, improving every time, interview, learning from everything he does, learning that you don't interview people who aren't in it for the same reasons, just up their own arse, for want of a different phrase. Sorry, whatever your name was, I've never met you, probably never will. But at the same time, it kind of does work that actually you can have that structure, but actually your route, but every now and then you're going to need someone to kind of help you for balance and such.
Share the load.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
I also thought it was quite interesting looking at, the people you chose for, the people you want to speak to, not necessarily family point of view, because I think everyone, unless they've had, and unfortunately some people do, real traumatic incidents with their family, they're not gonna, want to go back down that. But for a lot of people, we are lucky enough that we will have members of our family that we would want to sort of come back. But the other people you chose, Chester Bennington, Chris Cornell, David Bowie, all frontmen, all interesting characters as such. Obviously, two of them, all three of them left us tragically, but two of them obviously left us in very different circumstances to how David Bowie did. Is it something in those characters in particular that speaks to you, that you want to understand, or what really made, I know you're a fan of Chester Bennington and Chris Cornell. We've kind of covered that with Linkin Park and Audio Slave, like I said, but is there anything else behind them that really makes you kind of interested in them as people?
I think the ability to reinvent yourself is quite important. And I realised from listening to people like Billy Talent and Muse that they always sound like them, but they always release albums that don't quite sound like them. So I quite like that sort of era side of things, where Bo Burnham as well, I absolutely love him to pieces. Everything he releases is slightly different to how it should be, but it's always within his universe. But sometimes you listen to a band and you're like, this sounds similar to how I remember it, but it's too different for it to be traceable, So yeah, I think every season of this every series of this, I try to sort of flex my muscles and interview people that are a bit strange. Bodybuilders, business owners, psychologists. People sometimes don't want to talk to these people, Also problematic people. I mentioned Andrew Tate earlier. I'd quite like to have him on. I think he'd be quite interesting. I don't agree with everything he's ever said. But yeah, I think going back to the sort of music thing is that ability to not be defined by a certain period of time. I think that's quite powerful. David Bowie was very appearance driven. He would always change his character. So maybe there's something in there for that.
Do you think the guests, the people that you've interviewed, do you think they actually mirror your personality more than you realise?
Maybe. I think I've had a few on now. It's very hard to sort of give a yes or no answer to that. But
because just thinking out loud and sort of hearing you speak, like we said, tenacious, sensitive, hardworking, reliable, competent,
right, I see.
improving yourself. When you're talking to someone like Jay, for example, who I'll be honest, I'd never heard of her until she'd been on your podcast, and she's obviously someone who is known, and you admit yourself, you know her from working with Devon Townsend.
Yeah.
But she has obviously got that hard work, that drive, and you've even said earlier again that you want to give back to these other podcasts that are maybe where you were, 4 years ago, 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So can you see something of yourself in those people and thinking, these people are like me, they're hardworking, I'm going to give them the push? And it's similar again with the guests, because again, I believe, was it Ryan who was the drummer with Devon Townsend?
Yeah, RVP, yeah.
Yeah. So again, drummers, whether they want to admit it or not, a lot of people just think you bash around and there's no real art to it.
Yeah.
We know there is. You see a good drummer, you've seen a good drummer. But again, he's the driving force behind that now. He is not the man sat behind Devon. He is front and centre driving that forward.
Yeah.
So do you feel that when you look for people, are you looking for people that kind of, without knowing it, are ticking those kind of 5 words that you've almost thought of yourself?
Yeah, maybe. Probably something to that.
How does that make you feel? Are you sat there now thinking, yes, I'm just interviewing myself every week, or are you thinking you are actually supporting the right people? How have you taken that information? Are you now thinking, I need to think even wider, I need to go much, much bigger? Or do you think it's always going to be those people, because those are the people that are going to be willing to, join the community?
Well, one of the prerequisites to getting a guest on is they respond. So early doors, I emailed Joe Weller, who was a massive YouTuber. I emailed Ali A, who's even bigger as a YouTuber. And I think I emailed KSI, or his agent. It's probably a 6 degrees of separation agent. None of them got back to me, but then I started sort of scattergunning emails, sending the same subject, the same body, to like 40 emails at once. And it was a very sort of fish in a barrel approach to getting guests on. But I think there's potentially some water in the argument that I tend to interview people that are similar to me personality-wise. But yeah.
Oh, and don't get me wrong, I don't mean that as a
no, not at all,
as a criticism, because like you say, these are all incredibly positive, words. And as you say, these people, they realise they've got to push something. They need that helping hand. You've even said yourself, you need that help.
Yeah.
So you've told me about where you want it to be in 4 years, but finally, and the most important question, where will the meal deal be in 4 years?
It's a very good question, Sam.
Is the meal deal going to evolve into something that we're just not ready for, or is the meal deal always going to be the stable?
Season 15, I'm thinking of bringing the meal deal back, the question back for 1 season.
Come on.
Meal deals have evolved since we spoke last, mostly in price. because capitalism is fucking annoying. Yeah, I've gone a bit sort of just because I've been working in various different places and for various different people. They've always been near a Sainsbury's, which isn't my go-to place for a meal deal. So yeah, they do evolve based on geographical location because I'm a sucker for Tesco. I think they've got the meal deal nailed down. And Sainsbury's and Morrison's and Asda is a bit more restrictive. You've got a select amount of choices. So yeah.
Dude, I had a Waitrose meal deal the other day,
Yeah.
which, you know, I'm pretty sure I could have paid off some other bill with that money, but there you go. That was just what was there at the time. But go on. What as it stands is the ABP mandated meal deal.
Okay, so currently it's BLT, Blue Doritos.
Nice.
And the drink is now the wild card. So it's either a white Monster, because Go Energy currently aren't in the meal deal. But come fucking hell or high water, supermarkets, if you're watching, I will get Go in a supermarket by the end of this year. Code Bedlam 10 at checkout. I quite like Orange Lucozade. And I quite like a good old-fashioned Pepsi Max. Sometimes with a bit of cherry if I'm feeling really zazzy.
Oh.
So yeah. But yeah, they're not as common. I tried to make my own lunch now and try and cut the costs.
Yeah.
Because
the world we live in.
Flipping brutal out there at the moment financially.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. But yeah.
Excellent. Well, look, Ben, thank you very much for letting me do this.
It's all good.
I appreciate
Thank
it.
you for doing it.
To the people out there in the Beehive, if you have listened this long, then thank you very much. I appreciate you putting up with my nonsensical ramblings for however long this gets whittled down to. But it's been an absolute honour and a privilege, Ben. Thank you very much for
it's all right.
for letting me do it and putting up with me.
We'll try and do this every year. I think it's worth doing. So I don't get too ahead of myself and my ego inflates. But yeah, thank you as well to all the sponsors of this podcast. Got Shanty Spirit, Botanical Seaweed Vodka, shantyspirit.com. Use code Bedlam discount at checkout. Get 15 or 10% off. I can't really remember. It's been a long day. Go Energy, the most inclusive energy drink ever made. And run by bloody lovely people. I think Andy's just done a 10K as I'm recording this as one of his community events. So yeah, if you want to try Goat Energy, drop me a DM on Instagram as well, and I'll try and set you up with some stuff. And also we've got North Muse coming down the hill. It's not quite there yet. I can't promote stuff unless I've got physical product. That's how it works. But yeah, I'm really enjoying doing the podcast. And just need to keep going and need to take breaks and realise that not everyone gives as much of a shit about the podcast as me. And that's okay. But this has been lovely, Sam. It's been really good speaking to you. And don't be a stranger.
Definitely not, man.
Yeah, all good.
Nice.
So, yeah,
cool.
Thanks for watching, listening, viewing and subscribing. Trying to get to 500 subscribers by the end of the year on YouTube. So if you guys can press the button, that would be massively appreciated. But in the meantime, as always, keep it bedlam. Bye-bye.
Absolute Bedlam.
Hey guys, it's John here from Absolute Bedlam.
Bedlam.
We just wanted to take a moment to introduce you to our brand new Patreon. If you head over to Patreon now, you can get access to behind the scenes footage, ad-free content and episodes. You can even send your own requests in terms of the content you would like to see us create. All of this is available to you and more. We've got free options available to you as a patron with us. If you just want to support what we do and help build the Absolute Bedlam experience, a small fee of £1 a month, you can do just that. If you want to get access to that ad-free content, those ad-free episodes, for £5 a month, you can join the Hive. And if you want all of that and more behind-the-scenes footage, commission works with us, live Q&A sessions, for £10 a month, all of the madness, all of the chaos of Absolute Bedlam will be yours. So head over to Patreon now, become a patron, and join the Hive.
Absolute Bedlam Podcast. Who? What? Where? Why?